Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL broadcast. My name is Dan Hansis, and I'm coming to you from a virtual room filled with heroes. Mark Sessler, Greg Rosenthal, what is up, boys?
Big show for you, Dan. A lot of Jets talk. It's not all good, but I know you were firing yourself up before the show with like a little John Henderson slap, so I know you're excited.
I can't wait to talk about gangrene. Despite all the thunderclouds around Florham Park, sunshine, I predict getting through. But there's so much to get to. We're going to do an entire AFC East deep dive, in fact. But before we do that, we need to get to news around the NFL trying to get back to work on the field, training camp, and COVID-19, well, developments late this week. As we get into the news, the NFL and the NFLPA doing work. Rap sheet reports the union player reps approved the NFL's proposal on their conference call. The deal is done. Let's play football. And yes, this comes after weeks of discussions and negotiations. And now there is an agreement, a foundation in place to play amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are some notable changes to the CBA to get this done. Rosters cut to 80. Before veterans report or by August 16th. Practice squad will increase to 16 players from 10. Also, veterans will be involved with the practice squad for the first time. And also, the 2021 salary cap will be at least $175 million. The 2020 salary cap remains unchanged. Greg, that's a drop of approximately $20 million.
And, you know, we've seen it.
NFL.com/MTS video for content we're sure you will enjoy. See you next time.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL broadcast. My name is Dan Hansis, and I'm coming to you from a virtual room filled with heroes. Mark Sessler, Greg Rosenthal, what is up, boys?
Big show for you, Dan. A lot of Jets talk. It's not all good, but I know you were firing yourself up before the show with like a little John Henderson slap, so I know you're excited.
I can't wait to talk about gangrene. Despite all the thunderclouds around Florham Park, sunshine, I predict getting through. But there's so much to get to. We're going to do an entire AFC East deep dive, in fact. But before we do that, we need to get to news around the NFL trying to get back to work on the field, training camp, and COVID-19, well, developments late this week. As we get into the news, the NFL and the NFLPA doing work. Rap sheet reports the union player reps approved the NFL's proposal on their conference call. The deal is done. Let's play football. And yes, this comes after weeks of discussions and negotiations. And now there is an agreement, a foundation in place to play amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Here are some notable changes to the CBA to get this done. Rosters cut to 80 before veterans report or by August 16th. Practice squads will increase to 16 players from 10. Also, veterans will be involved with the practice squad for the first time. And also, the 2021 salary cap will be at least $175 million. The 2020 salary cap remains unchanged. Greg, that's a drop of approximately $20 million if it ends up being in that neighborhood next season. And that was a point of contention, obviously, for the players who know, we all know, the financial ramifications of what COVID-19 is doing across the spectrum. Players don't want to get hit too hard in the future.
No, they don't. And like a lot this offseason, it's kind of like, we'll worry about 2021 when we get there. I'm thinking and worrying about training camp. And the great news is starting on time. The news that's just a little hard to wrap my arms around is it's just not going to be training camp, at least how we imagine it. The first couple of days are going to be testing, then there's going to be physicals, there's a proposed week of strength and conditioning. So you're over 2 weeks from when training camp starts till players are on the field practicing, and then it's another 5 days after that until they're in pads. So the timeline for these players to get ready for the season is going to be really difficult for the coaches. There's not going to be many padded practices. There's not going to be a lot of evaluation time for these rookies to impress their coaches. And to me, that really favors the teams that have continuity, and it favors veterans winning training camp battles and getting on the field early, because we're just going to be like just starting the season in a way that we've never done it before.
Boy, you said it, Greg. And I mean, I think of someone like Joe Judge, the rookie Giants head coach, who's about 50 days away from having his coaching debut on Monday Night Football against the Steelers. I mean, that's not the dry run you imagine when you sign up for this. No preseason. And the other factor here is there is this window for opt-outs. And, you know, we've seen it in a few other sports here. You got to wonder if some players, for safety or for just precautionary reasons, decide not to go through with this. I would imagine that number would be relatively low, but that's just a guess. I would say this, though. We've been doing our podcast through all of this. We've been doing this show through all of this, through a pretty dark offseason. This is the first real tangible ray of optimism that we've been able to talk about for so long. And football is going to be starting on time. We'll see what happens from there. But this is something that we can celebrate based on what we've had to talk about, guys, for so long.
I mean, I'm totally with you on that, Mark, because we don't know if players are going to be able to stay on the field. But the first thing they got to do is get on the field. And this was huge progress on Friday toward that front. And yes, that is something to track. Now, when I look at, and as a big baseball fan, this has been popping up quite often with players opting out over at MLB. High risk and general opt-outs of participation due to the pandemic. There's a deadline that will be put on that is to be determined at this time. And of course, the absence of the preseason. There will be no preseason in 2020. Everything's different this year. And going back to your Joe Judge commentary there, Mark, yes, this is going to be tough to get offenses up to speed, get head coaches' feet wet, to get rookie players. I have concerns about injuries, soft tissue injuries, as guys ramp up to get ready for a game. When they step on the field for their first game, Greg Rosenthal, it will be the first game they play at all. If you're a college guy, since December or January, a pro, same thing. That's a long time.
It is crazy to think about. And I always think about September sort of as a feeling out period, especially in this era of football where there's not that many starters playing in the preseason. Bill Belichick uses it to evaluate, and I think you're going to see that more than ever. September is going to be really strange, but August is going to be strange. The practice squad signing day. I'm a dork, and I'm into the transactions. Like, that's going to be wild. Signing 16 guys all on the same day. It favors really smart front offices who are going to load up with a lot of reserves this year that they never could before.
You just know the Patriots are going 4-0 in September. Bill is totally plugged in and going to be ready to handle this. In other news, yes, there is other news to talk about. Effective immediately, the Washington football team will call itself the Washington football team, pending the adoption of a new, more permanent name. This is coming a week after the Redskins was sent to the dustbin of history. So this is what it looks like right now in a tweet sent out by the Washington football team. Mark, what do you think about the Washington football team?
I kind of love it. I wouldn't be that upset if maybe it's stuck. It's just it's very basic on its own, but then incredibly original compared to all these teams named after animals and giants and airplanes. There's something to like about it. I do think it creates some issues for announcers out of the gate who are going to be doing this, on the fly. You have to say sort of like, hey, Dwayne Haskins has a football team rolling right now, Jim. It's just going to create some awkward moments potentially.
You're funny, Sessler.
Touchdown football team.
You purposely went after the two New York teams, strangely, by saying football and giants and airplanes. Your team's named the Browns. What are we doing over there?
No, named after the best coach in football history. I don't think that's a problem.
There's got to be a chance, at least, as you said, Mark, that this name sticks. You're telling me if Dwayne Haskins and Ron Rivera lead a team that's not expected to do very well into the playoffs, and people are starting to kind of ironically get into this name, and I've seen the uniforms. The uniforms look pretty sweet. I think they're old school. They're pretty cool. I think if they play well, I think it could stick.
I could see that. That wouldn't be crazy. It also does tell me, there's been criticism building around the Washington football team about their former name for years and years, and ownership was staunchly against ever changing it. This answers the question whether, even when they were on the outside saying we're not changing it, whether they had some type of internal think tank and they had a name ready to go just in case. No, they have a process to go through, and apparently it's going to take more than one football season. All right, in other news, Antonio Brown. This guy, he's hard to figure out. On Twitter earlier this week, he sent out a series of tweets, seemed to saying he's walking away. He's retiring from football. A day later, he fires off an update that he's ready to play. He's retiring. No, guys, can't do this anymore. Bring in Ricky Hollywood.
Done with this story.
That's
hey
it.
Guys.
Ricky Hollywood. Hi, how are you? You know what we have to do when we get sick of a story. We just need you to light a match and splash the story itself into the sun. Can you please do that? Could you?
Let's do it. I got one right here.
All right. I hope it lights.
Here we go.
Look at
First
you.
try. Look at you.
One and done, Ricky Hollywood. All right. See you later, Antonio.
This is not safe.
There goes.
People don't return from the sun, as far as I know.
Typically, no. Goodbye, Mr. Big Chest. I mean, not the man himself, flawed as he is. The story. We're sick of the story. If you're back in the league, we'll talk about you again. All right. In other news, the Kansas City Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champions, and they are feeling pretty frisky about themselves right now. Chris Jones, their gifted defensive lineman, had this to say during a radio interview this week about the team's chances of running it back.
This is only the beginning. Be prepared to have another parade and another parade and another parade, because we're going to make sure we bring not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5+ rings to Kansas City. It's been 50 years. The wait has been great, but the wait is over now, and it's time to create a dynasty. And I want them to fully know that Stone Cold Jones is here to stay. Sack Nation is here to stay, and we're going to make a movie of this.
Is it crazy?
A little crazy, a little overconfident, a little poking your finger in the chest of the football gods. And Tyreek Hill talked later in the week. He lifted it up to 7, and that's great. It's fun. The Chiefs, they should enjoy this title. But I don't know. You think of Drew Brees has one title, Aaron Rodgers has one title, Brett Favre has one title. It's not easy to stack them up. It's asking for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill, if they won 7 in a row without interruption, would be 32 at the end of that. So they can't go on a dry run in the middle of this. And, I think back to the team, the 2011 Green Bay Packers team that went 15-1 after winning the Super Bowl. And people thought they are going to do all this. They are going to win multiple titles. Then they get whacked by the Giants in the playoffs, and they've never been back since. You're right, Greg. You toy with the football gods. You bring the hubris up. Gods in general don't like hubris. So a little concerning.
I will say this. The hardest thing to do is win the first one. They got that out of the way. It brings to mind, of course, over the NBA, the Miami Heat, when LeBron and Wade joined up with Bosch, and they held a ridiculous press conference in the arena down in Miami, and LeBron infamously said, we're not going to just win 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. And when the Heat had that press conference, they hadn't even won 1, which made it all the more audacious. Well, the Chiefs got the first one, and they also, just like the Heat had LeBron, arguably the greatest player of all time, or in the top 3 of the conversation, at least to me, Patrick Mahomes has that level of upside himself, doesn't he? So why not?
He does.
Dream.
That's the thing is Mahomes is better than Brees early. I'm going to say, I really think he is going to have a better career than Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to have a better career than Favre. And what he also has, which Favre and Rodgers did not, is a Hall of Fame coach. So that duo, it would be a disappointment if they only got, let's say, 1 more. I'm putting the over under at 1.5, but I'm going to give him 2 more. What do you give him, Mark?
Well, I think that, like, if you want to be called a dynasty, you probably got to win 3. in this era right now. And I think that's totally, it would be an upset if they didn't win 3, right? Based on where they are at this time. Upset. But that said, I mean, you can just point to teams left and right that don't get this done. And we were very close to the Niners winning that Super Bowl and us asking how many more Kyle Shanahan can win. So, it's a turn of the dime type scenario, guys.
What the Patriots did was unprecedented. They won 6 over 20 years. The Steelers are the only other team that has 6, and they did it over the course of decades. It's not easy to do, but I don't put anything past this Mahomes guy. And you know what? Let's give the Chiefs a pass. They're not even going to get to really enjoy the defense that the opening night with the crowd going nuts at Arrowhead because of COVID-19. Why don't we give them this? Why don't we let them puff their chests out and have fun?
Have fun.
All right.
And hopefully Patrick Mahomes does play till he's 40. That would be great.
That would be great. All right. Coming up next, the president. Jamal Adams is still unhappy with the Jets, and now he's putting head coach Adam Gase on blast like never before. Our buddy Mike Giardi joins the broadcast to talk great expectations facing each team in the division. Don't go, Jamal. Welcome back to the broadcast. It's time to talk about the AFC East and the expectations for each of the 4 teams. And to do that, we welcome in a great friend of the show, Mike Giardi, who does great work for us at NFL Network, right here on NFL Network. What's up, Mike?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
It's going very well. There's so much going on in the AFC East right now, Mike. You were up there in Boston where everything's run through the Patriots for so long. Well, now things are a little more interesting, and let's get to each of the teams. Let's start with my Jets, where the drama continues to build. It's been a rough week for the Jets. Ownership has come under fire for some disturbing allegations out there, and now we have around the greatest player and the head coach drama. And we're going to have this conversation about how the Jets can beat expectations. How do the Jets beat expectations? Well, Adam Gase has to be able to do this job. And he has to be able to handle the entire team. And that includes Jamal Adams, the star safety, who did an interview with the New York Daily News, Manish Mehta, and had this to say: I don't feel like he's the right leader for this organization to reach the promised land. Leader, what really bothers me is that he doesn't have a relationship with everybody in this building. Yes, Greg, Jamal Adams wants to get paid. And now he's going after Gase publicly. It's not a great look for the coach.
No, because if Jamal Adams is talking like this, he's not the only one that says. I just can't remember a superstar player being on the record so dismissive of the head coach. And I guess I just wonder, what is Adam Gase going to do to make up for it? Because if he's not great at dealing with his players, of inspiring them in terms of leadership, being in front of the room, well, is it going to be his play calling that makes up for it? We haven't really seen any evidence of that. So it just, raises the question, Mike, kind of what is Adam Gase bringing to the table here?
That's a great point, Greg. If he can't reach the guys, then he better be able to reach Sam Darnold. And they went 6-2 down the stretch last year. So I think some of Jamal's criticism maybe is a little bit off base, at least in terms of the overall projection of the team and the way they were playing at the end of the last year. But look, Darnold is key to all of this. You draft a guy in the top 5. You've invested in him. Now you went out and signed a bunch of different offensive linemen this offseason and drafted Becton in the first round. So you're giving him protection. Now, they could have done a better job getting him more weapons, but I think really a lot falls now on Gase's relationship with Darnold and if he can take Darnold to that next level, Mark.
I just get concerned about a Jets organization that has traded away 4 of their last 8 first-round picks. And it reminds me, when you're back in high school and you got that friend of yours that is, he has no car and he has no job, and he's still trying to ask out the most popular girl in school week after week. And it's like, no, Ted, Shelly Magenta does not want to go to the dance with you. That's the Jets and every star player. They can't find a way to make it work. And I'm with you that if Jamal Adams is saying this, he is a team leader. He is speaking for other people on that roster. And I think that's one of the more concerning storylines for any team in the league veering into training camp, Dan.
Gase has a lot to prove this season, which it's going to be a make or break year for Gase. And Adams, let's face it, he has little leverage right now with the way his contract is structured. One thing he can do is talk, and he's doing a lot of it, trying to get the Jets uncomfortable, trade him or pay him. Let's talk about another team, Greg, the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I think the Miami Dolphins can beat expectations if Brian Flores is the truth, because he's going to have one of the hardest jobs, I think, of any returning coach in the entire NFL. If this pandemic hurt any team, I believe it's the Miami Dolphins because of all the young players and all the new players that they have on this team. I know they overachieve, and every time I hear Brian Flores speak, I believe he can do anything. And I believe they overachieved last year. He did an incredible job. But then you look at their roster, and along with the Jets, I think it's one of the worst rosters in the league. What position groups can you look at in Miami and think they're above average? He's working with a lot of rookies, a lot of free agents. He obviously has a rookie quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and it's just a lot to put on Flores' plate that people have expectations they're going to get better. Mike, to me, I mean, you've spent a lot of time around Brian Flores. If they got back to 5 wins, I honestly believe that would be doing a good job by him.
And Brian Flores would be ticked off if that's all they got was 5 wins. I think that's sort of the expectations that he set for that team. But there's a great point there, Greg, in terms of the missed reps for all those guys. You hear NFL coaches talk about 400 to 500 on-field reps were missed during the course of this offseason. And granted, those aren't high-level reps necessarily. You're not going hardcore like you would in a game. But still, for someone like Tua, if you want to see how close and quickly he can integrate himself into the system, then those reps are critical. And now, again, he's missed all that. You can talk all you want about the Zoom calls and all that, and maybe some of the things they were able to do off the Zoom calls, but it's not the same as being on the field. The speed, the competition, totally different. And I think it certainly puts them in a challenging spot, Mark.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I go ahead, Dan.
No, I was going to say the thing with Flores that I'm really tracking this year is that expectations were through the floor last year. They were talked about as potentially the worst team ever. And there is more pressure on them now because the team is expected to now take that next step. And with an extra wild card, maybe tension in that realm, the rookie, if Tua gets on the field and can play, that will be a change for him. I know everyone was a huge fan of what Flores did last year, and I agree. But I just think the challenge, especially with the schedule, the AFC East is a very difficult schedule. The Dolphins are up against it.
Yeah, I think they maybe were coming out of last year was such a nice story, and they knocked off New England that, I mean, I personally feel like Brian Flores has the chance to be a great coach, but the challenges are real. And you look at the roster, I mean, I am still marveling at the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick led the team with 243 yards rushing. I mean, behind the good story, there are elements here that are concerning, but they also spent a lot of money and added a lot to that defense too. I think 5 wins is maybe a little conservative. How about 6?
What's a better stat?
They got about 11 jobs open. It's wild. It's crazy.
Mark, what's a better stat? Ryan Fitzpatrick led his team in rushing last year, or the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers had 0 touchdown catches in 2017?
Well, the Chiefs one is well tread, but for me, it's Ryan Fitzpatrick because it's just the more. Right, I don't think that's ever going to happen again in our lifetime.
243 yards
coming up. We're only at halftime in our breakdown of the AFC East. After the break, we'll talk to the Cam Newton-led, maybe, Patriots and the rising Bills. Is Josh Allen ready to take the next step? Will the East go through Western New York? Stay tuned.
Right, steps away from pressure again, fires it now on the run, caught by Beasley at the 10, headed into the end zone, touchdown! He looked to the left and fired it to Tyler Croft on the right side, touchdown Bills! Darts up the middle inside the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! Nobody laid a glove on him. Josh Allen looked at pressure coming right in his face and fired a strike downfield to Smoke. Josh fires, got Cole Beasley at the 5, into the end zone, touchdown! What a play that was! We are the champions!
Welcome back to the broadcast, joined by Mike Giardi, and we're continuing to talk about great expectations in the AFC East. Mark Sessler, let's dig on those Buffalo Bills.
The Buffalo Bills are sort of a pet team for me. I think the Buffalo Bills are for dreamers. And if you want to take a look at the hot point there, it's Josh Allen at quarterback. And I think that the way people feel about Josh Allen says more about those people than it does about Josh Allen half the time. You got to sign up for the adventure of Josh Allen. And I understand that he was the worst quarterback in the league when it comes to deep throws and all that business. But you know what? I love the creativity of Brian Daboll and the way that he used him, especially down the stretch. They went hurry up, heavy, and it led to that playoff game that I went down to Santa Monica to a Bills bar, which is utterly rowdy, best fan base in the league, I think, on some level. They have an argument for that. And that crushing loss to the Texans, they are going to beat expectations if they turn it around this year and get to the Final Four in the AFC. Sean McDermott is a wonderful coach. I think the Bills have done a lot of things wrong. They did one thing right in getting Sean McDermott. You're bringing your entire defense back. It's one of the better defenses in the AFC. I like this team. If they're not a playoff team, we got problems.
I mean, Mark, you know what it says about me? It says I like quarterbacks who can aim at a target and then hit that target. I mean, Josh Allen.
Well, you're not the only one.
Ouch.
Right. He throws the ball 10 feet over his receiver's head or into the ground too many times, enough times that it makes you think at some point this is not sustainable. Doesn't mean they can't make a playoff run and that maybe he can be pretty close to league average because he does a lot of exciting things with his athleticism. But how many quarterbacks, great ones in NFL history, have you seen that airmail guys regularly, week after week?
Hey, 52% in his first year, 59 in his second. He needs to make that jump to 65. I think they have the best roster from top to bottom in the AFC. I love what Brandon Beane's done. I like what McDermott's done, but it really does come down to the quarterback. Can he take that next step? They love him up there. They say he's a dog. They say he'll work his tail off. He's got to work his tail off to make that big improvement.
There you go, Mike.
Mark, you know how it is. You know how it is with this show. With Greg Rosenthal, there's been only one good quarterback in the history of the AFC East, and it was Tom Brady. Never before, never again after that.
Well, this is the year where
I like Chad Pennington back in the day. Yeah.
Come on. He was accurate. I mean, let's throw more than 20 yards.
That shoulder. I love Chad Pennington. All right, Mike Girardi, the New England Patriots. Expectation time.
Well, I look at them and say, I think people are kind of aiming low, and maybe Cam move the needle a little bit higher for them. But I kept hearing about how they were devoid of top-end talent. What I know is the defense is still going to be legit. I think the coaching staff is still the best in the National Football League. And I think when you put that together, he needs to get some stuff out of the young players. You lose Kyle Van Noy, you lose Jamie Collins at that linebacker edge level. If you go Josh Uche, their second-round pick from Michigan, Anthony Jennings, from Alabama. I'm forgetting his name there. I haven't seen him on the field just yet. And Chase Winovich, if those guys can give you some production there, I think there's every reason to believe they're a top-5 defense again. Then if you can get competent quarterback play, that's all. Competent quarterback play, I think they're a 10-win team.
I would say this, too, that if you're looking at Cam Newton, and let's presume that he's healthy, I trust the Patriots to come up with an awesome plan for Cam Newton. And teams spent 20 years trying to figure out what Brady and Belichick were doing, and they couldn't. So I love the idea of New England unleashing Cam Newton and with a whole new element of surprise. And the idea that the Patriots have fallen off a cliff and they're not a factor is absurd. There's no team in the league I trust to come out of this pandemic-marred offseason more than Bill Belichick and friends.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point that they didn't get exceptional quarterback play last year. I mean, we talked on our podcast a lot. We pointed out Tom Brady was closer to the middle of the pack in terms of quarterbacks last year. And so maybe the quarterbacks this year don't have to be that much better. And the Patriots do have some assets that they haven't in a long time. I mean, that was the best Patriots defense since 2004. It is the secondary of Bill Belichick's dreams. And Mike, you make a great point that the young guys up front kind of have to step up, because I've been wondering where they're going to get this pass rush year after year, and they haven't really found guys, and yet they always end up coming through, including last year. They kind of generate a pass rush. And on offense, they also have a really good offensive line. I think they love their interior. They've got pretty good tackles. So they do have some strengths that they haven't always had in the past, even if they don't have it at quarterback.
I'll put you on the spot, Mike. Not to move away from the defense, which we know is excellent. and it was historically great in the first half of last season. If they approximate that, they're going to be more than okay. But at the quarterback position, Cam or Stidham, who starts more games, do you think? Tough spot.
If Cam is anything close to Cam, then it's Cam. The resume, what he's done, the way he looked in 2018 before the shoulder injury. I remember that was a new offense with Norv Turner. I think he's capable of ingesting all that they're going to give him. If physically that shoulder is right and that foot is right, it's a good year for Jared Stidham to watch and gain some more experience, if you will, as a backup.
Mike, you look good in the NFL Network polo. Be safe out there as training camp kicks off, and let's have some fun. It's a new era for the Patriots, and Giardi's going to cover it better than anyone. Thank you, buddy.
Looking forward to it.
Coming up next, you got it. The Jets have been waiting for a true franchise star quarterback since Joe Namath hung up his white cleats 45 years ago. Can Sam Darnold be the man in the Meadowlands? That's all I really want to talk about it. What do we call him, Mark?
Sam Darnold.
But I think at least some of the blame has to be put on Sam Darnold.
Why does Greg Rosenthal hate Sam Darnold?
He has struggled even when he's protected.
Who does he serve with his malicious agenda?
When you get locked in on trying to break the dynasty or tear him down, that's when you start losing control of yourself.
What's the real truth Greg doesn't want you to know?
He's going to flip one towards the end zone. Terrific improvisation by Sam Darnold.
Believe in Sam. Believe in the future. Paid for by Friends of the S-Darn Association for a Better Tomorrow.
Welcome back to the broadcast. And listen, all I really want to talk about is Sam Darnold. And I know, Greg, you have some viewpoints on the Jets quarterback. I have some viewpoints. Mark's going to have some thoughts. But yes, that was a political ad in a year of election. Your thoughts?
Well, it's typical. This is what happens when you have a Jets fan as a host of the show. Like, I hope you're enjoying the show. Jets are doing great right now. Ownership's been fine, and Jamal Adams, Sam Darnold's looked great the last couple of years. Have your fun.
I'm just more curious in that you have a coffee mug that says "boss" on it. How about that? Look at you.
Yeah, well, that was a terrific gift by the kids. I mean, it's the nickname you gave me, and it's the coffee mug. I have no shame.
All right, let's get it. Look at that.
This is terrible.
All right, let's get into it. Yes, I do want to talk about Sam Darnold. We talked about the AFC East, but Darnold is such a kind of fascinating figure in the division as he enters his third year. And obviously, as a Jets fan, many Jets fans, almost all Jets fans, remain optimistic that Darnold is the guy. What they are not confident about, what I'm not confident about, is the leadership around him, whether it's the head coach or everything in the organization right now. But Darnold, to me, is the guy. It's so easy to forget how young he is, that he was the youngest starting quarterback in the history of the NFL. When he enters week one this year at 23 years old, he's still going to be younger than Joe Burrow, the number one overall pick in the 2020 draft. That should be kept in mind. And then there's this as well. We all know the nightmare of the first half of last season, the monodiagnosis, the ghosts game with the Patriots, the struggles. Well, then you look at the second half of the season, and when you look at those numbers, it really does show you that this was a quarterback that was improving. The schedule did lighten up for the Jets in the second half, but they went 6-2, and nobody really remembers that. Darnold improved, the Jets improved, and I just think these are the things to build on. And you hope that the offensive line that's been completely has been done over completely, that improves. That's a big question mark. But the things that I do believe in is Darnold's ability to improve, and also Chris Herndon at tight end, that he could be a big-time playmaker after losing basically all of last season. That the wide receiver group with Denzel Mims as a rookie and Brashad Perryman and Jamison Crowder, an underrated slot receiver, one of the most underrated slot guys in the league, is going to be able to make some noise. And I think it's there for the Jets to improve, especially if Le'Veon Bell is better, which I think he can't be worse. Is it crazy for me to be so optimistic still?
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy.
Well, I mean, so Greg doesn't think it's crazy. Mark doesn't think it's crazy. Here's the thing. I mean, you're right. I can't think of a quarterback who has been placed in a worse environment over the past two seasons at a young age. And we now live in this absurd world where quarterbacks are supposed to be fully formed in a year or two just because Patrick Mahomes was. And Sam Darnold faced more pressure than any quarterback in the league last year. And still, we've seen over the past 2 years, look at the high points. There have been a couple games where you see what Sam Darnold could be. Still in this terrible environment. I don't like the environment going into this year either, but it's not all on Sam Darnold. I truly believe that the upside has not even been touched yet.
It's certainly not all on him, but I think after 1,600 snaps in the NFL, you can also say, look, if he was Deshaun Watson, he would have shown us that a little more. If he was Patrick Mahomes, he would have shown us that a little more. I even look at a guy like Daniel Jones. You know, down the stretch, he had as much pressure on him as anyone in Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones was making more plays, and it was the end of last season. You mentioned that, Dan, cutting it as the last 9 games, but it was really the last 5 games that had me worried because there wasn't a lot of progress there. The problems in terms of reading the coverage, and that's going to happen with a lot of young quarterbacks, but in terms of changing up what the defense is going to do after the snap, it still was confusing them. He was still missing a lot of throws, and I expect him with his athleticism to make a little more plays on his own. And that's where I'm a little concerned. I think he could be like a top 5 quarterback, or I think he could be a big time disappointment. It's probably going to be somewhere in between. But guys like Drew Lock and even Daniel Jones, I think showed a little bit better feel with pressure and made more plays on their own. With his athleticism, you would expect to see that.
That's all fair. And I hear you on that. And that's why he's so fascinating, because you could look at you can take an analytics deep dive and see Darnold as a guy that's going nowhere in this league. But then you could look at other numbers, and I'll throw one out there. Football Outsiders had his adjusted yards per attempt over the final 8 games, ranked 9th in the league. Like, there are numbers that you could point at that say he is growing. And I'm just really excited to see where he goes. The only thing that does concern me, and let's be real, is that it is the Jets that he's connected to. And it's Adam Gase, who we just talked about, who we have concerns about his ability to lead an offense. Is he just stuck with the wrong team? The thing that will kill me, boys, is if the Jets don't make Sam Darnold a star and then he becomes big somewhere else. I wouldn't be able to handle that. 45 years since Namath retired. I wouldn't be able to handle it if they had a guy in their building and let him get away.
Didn't see a Believe in Gase political ad anywhere. It was just Believe in Sam. Well, they're together at least for one more year.
These Jets know how to handle their star players, Dan. You're good.
All right, coming up next, we know there are hurdles to get past before real football stuff begins, but we're hitting fast forward to share the training camp battles we're most hyped up about this summer. Ty God versus Herbert. Yummy. Welcome back to the broadcast. Listen, we know there's a lot of hurdles to clear before we actually get everybody on the field and hitting each other in pads and all that stuff in training camp. But we're going to look ahead to that and take a look at some training camp battles that we're excited to talk about. We call this segment Spatially Responsible Training Camp Tussles We Care About. I like that. Okay, that's a nice way to get into it. Mark, why don't you get us going?
Well, I think the spatially responsible part of it with no preseason takes away one of the few real quarterback battles that we were looking forward to between Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. And I'm hearing people out of Chicago saying that this whole thing is advantage Mitch, that if there's not going to be games, that probably Trubisky has a better chance to start week 1. I don't buy it. You've given Nick Foles $21 million guaranteed. You traded a 4th-round pick for him. Didn't ask the Jaguars to take on any of the salary. When you could have gotten someone like Jameis Winston to be a veteran backup to Mitch. I think this is Nick Foles' job to lose. You got Matt Nagy, Bill Lazor, John DeFilippo, all who have worked with Foles before. They are the guys who signed off on bringing him in. I would think it's an upset if Mitch wins this job, because if he plays well this season, what do you do with Mitch Trubisky? I just think this is a Nick Foles scenario. Am I wrong here, guys?
That's a great scenario if Mitch Trubisky plays well, isn't it?
I think they're kind of softly moving on from an overly coddled 1st-round pick.
I think if you look at the contracts, you're right that Nick Foles is ultimately going to be there for a couple of years, whereas Mitchell Trubisky's in the last year of his contract. That's a good way to look at it. Also, think about how different they are. And like Mitchell Trubisky is an athletic quarterback who's not really a guy who throws deep too well. Even in a best case scenario, he's almost the opposite of Nick Foles. So how do you build one offense around Foles, one around Trubisky? I think you have to make a choice pretty quickly. And just based on seeing Nick Foles play quarterback at a really high level, I have not seen Mitchell Trubisky do that. So I'm with you. I think Foles has the edge.
I just get this vibe that the Bears, with everything that's gone on around Trubisky, aren't ready to give up the ghost yet, and they're going to give him one more chance, even if it's just for a couple starts. But I could be wrong. Obviously, your turn, Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to go with another quarterback battle. Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. Can you think of a top 10 quarterback who has less juice, less buzz, less, people talking about him around the country than Justin Herbert? And it's probably because he's not even going to win this job. I think the offseason being wiped away is really going to hurt him because Anthony Lynn knows Tyrod Taylor. We kind of know who Tyrod is. Those games in Cleveland were ugly, but I'm going to look at the other 70, 80 starts he had in the NFL. He's very conservative. He does not turn the ball over. He can make some big plays. He's there. He's kind of just moved the offense along. And I think that's all Anthony Lynn's looking for. It's a lot to ask Justin Herbert to step in and win that job without any preseason games.
I mean, Anthony Lynn was with him in Buffalo. I think he has a ton of belief in Tyrod Taylor. I didn't buy some of it early on before the draft, but I think they want Tyrod Taylor to take this as far as he can versus shoving Herbert into the job.
One spatially responsible training camp tussle I care about is what's going on in Philadelphia with the Eagles. Carson Wentz is one of my favorite players in the league. I just love the guy and how he throws and plays the game. But the Eagles didn't do right with him at the wide receiver position last year. And now I look at this depth chart and I wonder how it's all going to shake out ahead of week one. When you have Alshon Jeffrey coming off, that scorpion woman, Liz Frank, that injury, he's on the other side of 30. Deshaun Jackson, 33 years old, papier-mâché hamstrings, not to mention the anti-Semitic stuff from a couple of weeks ago. First-round pick Jalen Reagor in a summer without any offseason work. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside off a, borderline disastrous rookie year. Greg Ward did some things last year. Marquise Goodwin they got off the scrap heap in a trade. I mean, how is this all going to shake out? Because I don't know if the Eagles did right by Wentz when they had the opportunity this offseason.
I think you're right. It's one of the reasons I think they kept Deshaun Jackson. I mean, they know him, but they need him. He is the guy. Because Alshon Jeffrey, I'm not expecting him in the first month of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the PUP list and you don't see him until November. They're going to have Reagor really step up in his rookie season, or else this group is a bit of a mess.
All right. Give us a bonus one before we say goodbye to this great segment.
My favorite one is Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston. Mark Sessler's favorite player, Taysom Hill, against a guy in Jameis Winston who's thrown more touchdown passes than Taysom Hill has career attempts. I mean, Jameis Winston has more yards in his career than Chad Pennington and Darryl LaMonica. Taysom Hill has fewer yards in his career throwing the ball than Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu, he has fewer yards than. Give me a break.
Look, Greg, I mean, I hear you. I don't think it really matters who wins that battle because I do think Taysom Hill is going to get a real shot to be the future in New Orleans. I love Taysom Hill. I'd follow him to Jupiter and back. I love the guy. Dan, tell me I'm wrong.
I know you would follow him to Jupiter. Hey, did you guys know he was the best player on the field in their playoff loss against the Vikings? I feel like I heard that one or two times.
Best player on the field. You can't take that away from him.
Coming up next, we say our goodbyes, but not before one final thought. The Matthews family's football royalty, they have roots in Cleveland. Mark, how about Clay Matthews' beautiful golden roots bouncing around to Believe Land? Welcome back to the broadcast, and let's welcome in the great Ricky Hollywood, Erica Tamposi, our gifted producer. What's
How's
up, Ricky?
Going?
New background
Check out this
there.
Background, right? Stu's Wood, big fan of the pod.
Awesome.
Looks awesome.
Sharp.
Stu's Wood, great listener, great woodsman. Excellent. Let's do one final thought. Sessler, get us going, baby.
It's that time of year where teams are adding that last player they need to make the roster sing. And I look at Cleveland and say, why not add free agent linebacker Clay Matthews, the son of Browns legend Clay Matthews, who played for 19 years until he was 40 in the NFL. So don't tell me that this younger Clay Matthews, who had 8 sacks last year, is done. He's not. he could bring him in on a nice 1-year affordable deal. I know that I'm not alone in this thinking. The daughter of the legendary Clay Matthews and brother of younger Clay Matthews, the wonderful Jennifer Matthews, she agrees too. So let's get it done. What are we doing here?
You're in way too deep with this organization, Mark. You're in way too deep.
Official.
Greg.
NFL Network, I think, is maybe in a little too deep with Ian Rappaport, our insider. I was scrolling through the gram, saw this from our guy this morning, and look at this. It's the old rap sheet cutout at Citi Field. As if this guy doesn't have enough airtime, he's just getting a little more. Hey, look at me, rap sheet. Just the self-promotion, taking no days off when you're Ian Rappaport. I guess that's how you get to where he's at.
Brand building 101, cardboard cutouts and fake stadium people. All right, I want to say congratulations to Russell Wilson and his beautiful wife, Sierra, who welcomed in a new child. Win! That is the most Russell Wilson name ever. Oh, my God. And how much pressure on the kid to always have to win when your name is Win. And yes, I'm thinking about this. It takes us one step closer. We're going to get to the stage eventually where he just names a kid Go Hawks. So Go Hawks Wilson, it's coming. Just expect it down the road. Ricky, fish us up.
Well, last night, you guys, Taylor Swift's new album Folklore came out. And as you can see by this graphic, it's good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just good. And I mean, I enjoy it, but it's not, full of bangers like some of her other stuff, but it's mature. It's beautiful. And I think you'd like it. Greg, it's definitely your vibe.
Mature, not your vibe. So it makes sense you're not too into it.
So, are you in like a Metallica shirt right now? Like, what are you talking about?
The National, who helped produce that album. It all connects.
You guys, stop fighting. We're on national television. All right. Thank you for watching the Around the NFL broadcast. And check out the Around the NFL podcast 3 times a week, 4 times a week during the season. Thanks, everybody. Till next time. Be nice.